Good morning. I'm grateful for the invitation to be with you all this morning. I got an invitation from Nancy Robillard, and I'm so thankful for that. We moved about 8 years ago from New York City, but I was most recently actually back in April and May here this spring as part of the Air National Guard and the National Guard's response to COVID. I was assigned to the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner and was working with the remains recovery. Some of you may have read something about that over the course of the spring. And so I was working with that mission from April and May. I didn't really get to reach out to folks, so I'm sorry about that. It wasn't the time to be reaching out, but I was so honored, even though it was a difficult mission, I was honored and grateful to be able to serve my adopted hometown once again in a time of need. So I love this story of from Illusions, this parable. It's the opening chapter of Illusions, the Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah by Richard Bach. I was 17 years old and had just traveled by Amtrak from Salem, Oregon to San Francisco. I was auditioning for acting schools. Some friends of my dad's lived there at the time, and they let me stay on their couch for a week while I was auditioning. They were hardcore Grateful Dead heads, and they turned me on to this book. They turned me on to Richard Bach and Illusions. I wasn't expecting it, but this book opened up to me the beginning of my spiritual path as an adult. And it's really continued to companion me on this path. And I'm sure for some folks, they might find it really corny or simplistic. But for me, it started me on my UU journey, even though I wouldn't find Unitarian Universalism for many years. It started me on this journey in that it was the first time I found the holy in a book other than the Bible. Illusions has become a sacred book for me. So hanging on and letting go, phrases that can be trite, so simplistic and overused that they're really easy to dismiss. Right? Had an argument with your boss? Oh, just let it go. Don't let it bother you. Pandemic overwhelming? Politics got you down? At the end of your rope, tie a knot and hang on, just like that kitten in the poster. Right? Often these are actually sound spiritual practices to consider, but hearing it or even knowing it doesn't always help me figure out how to do it. Probably not surprising to anyone on here that knows me, I have some habits that are not real good for me. First, I hate to exercise. I mean, really, I don't actually know that I hate to exercise because when I do it, I feel good and I certainly like the effects it has on me. I just hate having to carve out time and then getting started working out. Once I get started, I'm usually pretty happy that I've done it. It's getting started, which is likely connected to my other, well, not just my other, let's say my second bad habit, which is that I tend to procrastinate and get over scheduled. So in school, I was always writing my papers on the last night, just hitting deadline or asking for an extension, which is interesting now being a professor on the other side of that. I resonate. At home, I'll put off doing the dishes or weeding the flower beds. So sadly, these two habits play off each other, often compounding the effects of both. I don't like to exercise, so I put off starting. And then it's too late at night, or the kids just got back from school, or it's time to make dinner, or I really don't have time, so I'll start tomorrow. Or another day, I'll start tomorrow. Oh, come on. Really just do it. Get up, out of bed, let go of this procrastination. This is not rocket science. This is not difficult conceptually. Really, and exercising is something that I need to do. It's something that I need to do to stay healthy, to manage my stress. And as I get older, as an older parent with an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, I got to do it to keep up with my kids. It's just what I need to do. But sadly, I am not advanced enough to change my behavior, my beliefs, or my habits by just hearing a phrase or a comment, no matter how true it might be. I seem to need more. I am not so spiritually advanced yet to do things that are good for me simply because they are good for me. So I'm going to tell on my mom a little bit here. Uh, my mom's afraid to fly, terrified to fly. In the last 35 years, 40 years, she's flown only a few times, but every time she has been heavily sedated. Once for work, a work conference, once when her mom died, and then she flew to Ecuador. Now, my mom is a surgical nurse, or was a surgical nurse. She's retired, but I think in her heart, she's always going to be a surgical nurse. For the last 25 years or so, doctors and nurses from her hospital have gone on medical missions to communities in Central and South America to perform surgeries, primarily for children who would not have otherwise have access to this type of treatment. Her best friends, who are also nurses, they have gone at least once a year with this team. And my mom, over the years, helped pack the equipment for the trips. She would take extra shifts to cover while her friends were away, but she had never gone. And the only thing that kept her back was this fear of flying. Now, over the years, I did everything I possibly could to get her fly with zero success. She is absolutely attached to being afraid to fly. It has become a major part of kind of her identity, her persona. When we used to live in New York, my mom would spend 4 days on a train to visit from Oregon, and then could only spend 3 days with us because she had to get back on the train for another 4 days for the return trip. She only had so much vacation time, you know? So I don't know what they did, but a few years ago, my mom's friends convinced her to fly to Ecuador on a medical mission. Now, my wife Laurel and I, at the time, we were visiting friends in Oregon, and so that we could be there when she returned, when she got back. She did not stop showing us pictures and talking about the kids and the hours and the conditions and the kids, right? Picture after picture, parents holding the children, crying with gratitude, kids hugging the nurses and doctors, descriptions of 14, 15-hour days, how they helped like 57 kids, most with multiple surgeries over those 2 weeks. I'm telling you, I don't know when I've ever seen her so excited about anything, including my wedding and any of her 11 grandkids. I noticed something though, interesting. She didn't say anything about the flights, nothing. Of course, I finally had to say something, right? I said, see, flying isn't so bad, right? Oh yeah, she said. She was thoroughly drugged once again, and she said she was terrified the entire time. Luckily, she goes on these trips with doctors and nurses who can manage her highly medicated state as they pour her in and out of a chair to get her on and off the plane. You know, a few days later, I overheard her while she was showing pictures and telling these stories to a friend. She said that the team was going to Peru that next January. And her friend asked if she was going to go. And mom paused and said, well, I don't know about January, but I'll go with them again. I won't fly to see my friends in Michigan or Julie in New York, but I would make myself fly to do this again. What are you going to do, right? From a personal standpoint, right? Take a breath. What are you going to do? And you know what? She did. Before she retired, she made one more trip. For my mom, being afraid to fly is something she hangs on to for dear life. She will not separate herself from it. But something changed on that trip to Ecuador. She let go of that fear enough to help someone else. In fact, lots of someone else's. By letting go, she became part of something bigger, which in turn has given her a reason not to grab so tightly again. She's not exactly like the creature in the story that lets go and flies through the current feeling free. She's a creature who flies to South America feeling drugged. She's going to cling again. She'll be taking Amtrak here to Chicago the next time she visits. Let's make no mistake about that. Mom may grab hold of this earth, twigs and rocks and all, but when it's time to head to a medical mission, she got out her passport and Valium and she went. And I'm proud of her. It doesn't have to be perfect. She got out of her own way long enough to show up for another human being. So, does being connected to something bigger make letting go easier? Or does letting go allow one to connect to something bigger? So, Lao Tzu, founder of Taoism, said, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." Consciousness and intentionality play an important role. Now, I do want to be clear here. I'm not making a judgment that letting go equals good and hanging on equals bad. That's not the point. There are plenty of things that are important to hold on to, right? Right now, jobs with benefits and a fully vested pension, really important to hold on to. Health procedures and protocols, right now, really important to hold on to. Neither are good or bad in and of themselves. Context is always important. Some relationships are good to hold on to, important to fight for. Others need to be let go of. Now, the same could be said of values one might hold, beliefs. I will fight to uphold and hang on to the Unitarian Universalist principles. Using our principles has allowed me to understand it's time to let go of the concept that there are only 7 and work to include this new 8th principle. So the question I posed earlier, does being connected to something bigger make letting go easier, or does letting go allow one to connect to something bigger? I think both are true. For me, being connected to something bigger than myself, like my family or my religious community, that does make it easier for me to let go of some things, like my need to be in charge all the time, or an expectation that my way is always the best way. If I let go of my tendency towards shyness and self-consciousness, I'm able to connect to other people and be in community and do the work that justice requires. You know, if I'm paying attention, my to-do list will point me in the direction of my current hanging on and letting go dilemma in really practical terms. It's August 23rd. It's the end of August already. What's on your to-do list? Mine is huge, and fall is like here. School is starting. You know, I could be through half my list and I'd be closer to running a 5K if it wasn't for procrastination. I seem to be hanging on to some of these habits, but something is changing. My to-do list has many tasks on it that if I take action on, even just small action on, I will start getting closer into alignment with my values and goals. Hanging on to what I believe to be important and making the commitment to pay attention makes it a little easier to get focused and get some work done. Some of the letting go's already happened. My challenge for you this week is to consider what is important to you. Use that practical tool. If you keep a to-do list, whether on paper or whether it's in your head, whether it's on a device, consider your to-do list, the little one and the big one. What are the dreams or goals that you've had, but tucked them away because although you saw another creature flying, didn't believe you could fly too? Is there a way that you to hang on and let go? Remember that creature in this story. When it let go, it didn't just effortlessly fly into its new existence. It tumbled and crashed against obstacles for a while. But by not going back to the old unexamined ways, it gets free. Blessed be, and amen.